much. I hope you had an opportunity to see some of the artwork that our presenter brought today. If you didn't, please, when you leave, I know you're buzzing out of here quickly, but stop and see some of the work that our presenter has done. I'm Holly Hansen, and I'm part of the program committee, but it's a committee of wonderful ladies that work really hard to bring you a great program each year. So Gail was in charge of this month's presentation, finding a presenter. She's not presenting, right? No heart attack, yeah. But she's part of the committee. So I'll let Gail tell you a little about our presenter, and then we'll have our program.
I'm one of the shorter ones, so I'll have my talks here. I'm delighted to introduce to you Karis Feezell. Now, perhaps some of this artwork is familiar to some of you because Karis did have it on display at the Griner House in downtown Crossville. And so she has given me a little something to say. She's 20 years old. She's a self-taught artist who faces physical challenges every day. Born with cerebral palsy, she has learned not to let this issue hold her back from achieving her passions and goals. As an artist, she has turned her disabilities into abilities, creating something beautiful from bad circumstances. She not only uses her art to fight her physical battles, but she also uses it to fight against human trafficking by raising awareness and supporting a safe house for survivors through her art sales. So a portion of her sales does go to a safe house for women or people who have been human trafficking. A few little sidelines. She's an artist, art teacher, an entrepreneur. She has 3 jobs. She does the filming and editing for videos for her local TV station, and I want to say it probably Illinois, Pikeville, but it's really Pikeville. And she has a Mastiff Pyrenees dog, which if you are dog lovers know is a large dog. Our dog thinks that she is a lap dog. Karis has been in the Chattanooga Girls Choir for 8 years. She traveled with the choir to Hawaii, Ohio for the World Choir Games, and Ireland. And she loves cold weather, but that's okay. So Karis is going to share with you today. She has a PowerPoint presentation, which is why her podium will be down here so that you can appreciate the PowerPoint. I hope you have a chance to look at the artwork again. She's going to be here after the presentation. So, Karis, the ladies are waiting.
Hello, how is everyone doing today? Good. All right. I'm so honored that you all are here, and I want to thank Gail and Holly for asking me to come speak with y'all today, and for just preparing such a beautiful program. It's a gorgeous venue and very beautiful people here in the audience today too. So thank you all for being here. I've had the opportunity of sharing my story several times before in front of various groups of people, but I am not a professional public speaker, so just wanted to get that out there. You can tell from the notebook that I brought, the big old notebook up here. When I was asked last year to speak to you today, I mentally freaked out for a few minutes because I was told that I would be speaking to about 300 women, which is one of the largest groups I've ever spoken to before. Oh, okay. I'm a very tall person. And then my next thought was, what am I, a 20-year-old, going to say to a whole bunch of women who have experienced life for longer than I have? So my hope is that after I share my story, if you haven't learned anything new today, that you can at least walk away encouraged. So I've got this pet elephant that follows me around. If you haven't noticed him yet, you're probably one of the few. She actually mentioned him earlier. I thought about naming him Harvey or something, but then thought that that would make the situation even more weird than it already is. But I'm a person that will always point out the elephant in the room. So here it goes. I have cerebral palsy, and I like telling this to people right off the bat because otherwise the audience just kind of sits there and thinks, does she even know? So, because I walk like a duck, but ducks are pretty adorable when they walk, so take that into account. I'm almost 21 years old, and all my life I have had to fight to overcome the challenges of cerebral palsy. Now, I am a Christian, and God has interwoven himself throughout my story so much that it would be difficult to share it with you today without talking about him and my faith. A lesson I have learned as a Christian is to not get too comfortable in my comfort zone, because God will eventually push me out of it. He always shows himself through our weaknesses if we let him, and it is such a beautiful thing when we do. I love sharing my story with people because it gets me out of my comfort zone and allows me to make a better connection with others.
I will come up to help you.
Oh,
I'm going to hold this microphone.
Okay, thank you.
Because some people can't hear you, and you have a lot to say.
okay, thank you so
Can I do
much.
that
Yes.
for you? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I would hold it, but then it would be going like this the whole time.
It might go that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So when I was born, the umbilical cord was tied in a knot, tight, and cut off air circulation for about 8 minutes. I had to start fighting for my life before I was even born. I was almost dead before the doctors resuscitated me, and while I was alive, I was still harmed in the process. Because of the lack of oxygen, the part of my brain that controls my motor skills, the cerebellum, was damaged, causing muscle spasticity and tremors. I was also born with birth defects in my hands and feet, as well as Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, and severe heart murmur from a valve that wouldn't close. The doctors wanted to immediately operate on my heart, but after a lot of prayer, the valve miraculously closed. I couldn't open my hands until I went through intensive therapy. I can open them now, it just takes some time and they still don't fully cooperate. I just have to work a little harder to do things. My hips are turned slightly inwards, causing my feet to turn in as well. While I still can walk and run, this does affect my knees in a severe way. My tremors will dislocate my knees, and I know that's, pretty crazy, but they do, and so I'm hoping to eventually fix this with a double knee replacement surgery. I was born with Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome in my DNA, and outward markings, dimples behind my ears, and strawberry-colored patches of skin at the top and base of my spine. The doctors said that a split tongue, cleft down the head, and learning disorders often accompany Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome. However, none of those showed up in me, and you can imagine how relieved my parents were when I started saying 3-word sentences at the age of 10 months old. But unfortunately for them, I have not shut up since then.
Can you hear her better that way? Is that?
All right. I believe God left the mark of Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome on me to remind me that he has been fighting my battles since the time of my existence and will continue to do so until I draw my last breath. I do not know how many of you here are Christians. Some people may hear my story and the stories of so many others like me, or stories where the condition is even worse, and think, how could there possibly even be a God that loves us? From one who lives and fights constantly with these day-to-day struggles, I say, how could there possibly not be a God? Before I took a single breath, a fight began for my life. It would take me all day to share the ways that God has showed up with his miraculous power and strength through my life. Yes, life is hard, but I was never promised it would be easy. So I encourage you, through my story, to keep fighting through whatever you are going through. I went through a time in life where I was letting my hardships control me. I had completely given up and just wanted to die. I look back now and see all the opportunities I missed out on because of that mentality. Now I am not just living today, but I am challenging myself to find ways to live life to the fullest, trusting God has a purpose for my life. That is how I keep going. There are a few main lessons I have learned that had to happen before I could start living life to the fullest, even in the bad circumstances. First, and possibly most difficult, is to stop taking yourself so seriously. Any form of pride and self-consciousness can become a foggy glass that you then see the rest of the world through. This was one of the most difficult things that I had to call myself out on. Being disabled, I was constantly self-conscious, and I cared what other people thought about me, and I was always conscious of the stares I got in public. I was extremely embarrassed about the defects in my hands and feet and the obvious constant tremors. Because I dealt with so much assumption from other people who would see my outward defects and think I was probably mentally disabled as well, I was uncomfortable with associating myself with other people who were mentally disabled. I did not want to be placed in that category. I couldn't see past my own nose. As a result, I missed out on creating amazing friendships, meeting beautiful and unique people, and just enjoying life when I was outside the comfort of my own home. As soon as I stopped taking myself so seriously, my life began to change and move in a steady forward motion because it opened up so many opportunities and experiences that I was unknowingly keeping myself from. The second lesson I went through was learning to love and accept myself for who I was created to be. Let me tell you something that will blow your mind. We cannot change the past, no matter how hard we try. Let me tell you another crazy thing. Where you are, there you will be, no matter how fast we try to run away. For many years in my adolescent life, my mind was stuck on the fact that I was born into this life with cerebral palsy and defects in my hands and feet, and I had no say in the matter. It irritated me that I couldn't do things the way normal people could. It made me mad that I had to live the rest of my life in this defective body. My mind felt like a bird trapped in a cage of my defective body, and there were many times I wished I was mentally disabled because my mind wanted to achieve and do so many things that my body couldn't do. I believed that having a disabled mind would fix this frustration that I have to deal with on a daily basis. However, I eventually had to realize that I could sit around and sulk about things I couldn't change, or I could do something with what I had and change and create a better future for myself. So I began focusing on the things I had achieved, and that small mental switch allowed me to accept and love who I was. I could accept that my circumstances, both bad and good, were for a reason, and that God was planning something extraordinary for my life. The hardest part was learning to love myself. I will tell you, once you accept and love yourself, you will begin to accept and love others more in your life. You will be able to achieve more and overcome the obstacles that are thrown at you because you are not constantly fighting against yourself. Life is too short to go through it, hating and blaming yourself for things you cannot control. The third lesson of learning how to live life at its fullest is to set goals and work towards them with your entire being. The easiest part of this is setting the goals for yourself. It's even easy to begin working for them. Where the rubber meets the road is when obstacles get in the way of what you are trying to achieve. How far are you willing to go? How much are you willing to sacrifice? For myself, art is and always will be a part of who I am. In the beginning, however, it tested me on several levels. I had to discover different ways to work around my hand defects and tremors. It took a lot more strength for me to paint than most other artists. My muscles ached all the time, and my hand would grow stiff with pain, and it still does.
Oh, you can't read.
Sorry, you're fine.
I thought she was memorizing all this.
I know, I thought so too, but I had to try again and again as my tremors caused me to make mistake after mistake. What kept me going in the beginning was seeing the glimpses of growing beauty through the mistakes, showing me that this would be possible and that my talent was progressing. Obstacles in life can not only cause a block, they can also create fear and uncertainty. There is a healthy type of fear that will keep you from doing something stupid, and then there's the unhealthy fear that will try and prevent you from growing. I made a promise to myself that any time I felt the unhealthy fear about a decision or opportunity, I would pursue that fear. I would do everything in my power to conquer that fear by pursuing that thing. I did not want to look back at the end of my life and see that it wasn't even mine because fear was controlling it. I know this is super easy to say, but acting it out is quite difficult. It will take time, energy, discomfort, and it will be something I will have to deal with for the rest of my life. But that is a price I'm willing to pay. I have been an art teacher since December of 2015, and prior to teaching art, I never considered offering art lessons. At that time, art had always been a private part of my life because of my cerebral palsy, muscle spasticity, and defects in my hands. I have to paint differently than other people by stabilizing my hand with my face. When I would paint in the privacy of my room, it became a time of unbridled freedom to be myself. I could unearth the parts of me that I believed were not beautiful and that I kept covered up underneath in the presence of others, and I could create something beautiful out of them. When I would paint, it was the only time I stopped judging myself. Everything was exposed, but nothing else mattered but the painting and the strokes of the brush. I didn't even let my own family see me paint. I would just show them the finished product at the end. I in no way wanted to teach art for this reason. When I was asked to teach a 7-year-old boy, my automatic response in my head was no. But then I remembered the promise I made to myself to not let fear control my life. I agreed to teach him, but was dreading our first lesson. The first lesson came and went and left me shocked. The 7-year-old boy, Joshua Lee, was extremely quiet in the beginning, but eventually opened up. He didn't stare at my hands. He was very respectful and a fast learner. He treated me like any other teacher, which made me realize that I had blown a lot of things out of proportion with my fear. All in all, he was the best first student I could have asked for. I could tell he loved art and understood the importance of it at such a young age. I soon became comfortable with teaching, and I now teach Joshua's 2 younger brothers as well as a few other students.
Wow.
Teaching also allowed for other opportunities to open up for me. The income I get from art lessons has given me the ability to support girls through Holt International. Wynn lives in China, and I started supporting her in 2016. And in January of this year, I began supporting Nu, who lives in Vietnam. Being able to help them through my art has been such an amazing blessing to me that I'm so very thankful for. Teaching is now just as important to me as creating art myself. It has not only opened up doors for me, but it has also given me the confidence to pursue other things that I thought were next to impossible. Watching my students' love, appreciation, and talent for art constantly amazes me, and to think my life would have been so different if I had just said one word back in 2015, no. There is an artist technique called negative space. This is when the artist draws the space around the subject instead of drawing the subject itself. Here are a few examples. Drawing like this forces the brain to shut off the left side and just use the creative side. When this technique is applied to a regular drawing or painting, it makes for a better and more accurate end result. However, it is difficult to draw this way at first because you are focusing on the space of nothingness around the object instead of the object itself. which is the opposite of what you normally do when creating art. It is difficult but important retraining of the brain and understanding that the negative space is just as important as the positive. Look at this picture. You can see the arrows pushing out and you can see arrows pushing in. Both are shaping the face. You see, we can get so focused on the bad circumstances in our lives and on the hardships that we neglect to see the space around our lives. We forget to notice the good. Why is that it is so easy to focus on the bad in our lives? Because good things are so easily taken for granted. It is also because the bad circumstances can be a demanding thing. They are something that we feel like we need to fix. And in a way, it can be something that affects us more than the good. For example, if you get in a wreck and walk away uninjured, then you are thankful for life and you go about your day. Maybe a little bit more sensitive to how fragile life is, but that's usually it. However, if you come away from an accident with an injured leg that has to be amputated or damage to the brain, that affects you for the rest of your life. This is an extreme example, but it gets the point across. When bad circumstances happen, you can do one of two things. You can focus on the negative aspects of it, or you can focus on the positive side of it. This decision applies to every event that happens in our lives, both big or small. In some cases, it is easier to focus on the positive than in others, but in the end, these decisions are what will define your life. I want to encourage you to start doing something. Every time something bad happens, no matter what it is, I want you to immediately think of something good. For example, if someone disappoints or angers you, immediately think of something positive about that person. If something terrible happens to you, try and think of a way that circumstance will make you stronger or help you later in life. There is a motivational speaker I absolutely love, Nick Vujicic. You can do one more. He was born without arms or legs, yet travels the world and speaks to thousands to encourage them with his story. One of my favorite things Nick does is he says, when you fall down, you get back up. And then he literally falls down and gets back up without the use of any limbs. I think of my struggles as nothing compared to what he has to deal with. We all have struggles and hardships. What matters is whether or not we let them control and define who we are. Cerebral palsy does not have the power to define who I am. God does. And He has given me the strength to turn my disabilities into abilities. About 5 years ago, I created a website for my online art gallery, Ashes to Beauty Artistry, to allow people to view and purchase my work. People immediately began supporting me, and it was such a huge blessing. I have another website that works in conjunction with it called Art to Free Hearts. My dream for Art to Free Hearts began in 10th grade. I was assigned to make a mock art grant project and present it in front of my homeschool co-op class. The project needed to help the community in some way. Long story short, I came across an article on human trafficking while researching, showing some very horrifying statistics. I knew some about human trafficking before then, but not much. After reading that article, I knew then that my project was going to help fight against human trafficking and that it would one day be a reality, not just homework. My project Art to Free Hearts is a website that raises awareness about human trafficking, giving you statistics, information, and ways you can help fight. This project also helps support the amazing nonprofit organization Blazing Hope Ranch. They provide sanctuary for women who have survived the horrors of human trafficking, offering them a place to live, counseling, and educational opportunities, helping them find jobs to begin a new chapter in their lives. Because human trafficking covers such a huge array of different things, it is difficult to give it a specific definition. But one more commonly known definition is modern-day slavery that involves the action or practice of illegally transporting people from one country to another, typically for the use of forced labor or commercial sexual purposes. And that definition is just gives us a tiny understanding of the magnitude and horror of this issue. Slavery did not end in the 18th century as many Americans believe. In fact, there are more people enslaved around the world today than at any other point in history, with an estimated 40 million people enslaved around the world. Human trafficking generates $150 billion a year globally, making it the top criminal industry. Human trafficking does not just include illegally transporting people for forced labor. There have been many cases of human trafficking survivors saying that they were trafficked by their own family member in their own house and none of their friends knew about it. Kids can still be attending school and living at home while they are trafficked every day and their family and friends are oblivious. And this issue isn't something that is just happening overseas. It's happening here in Tennessee, in our backyards, and sadly most people are completely blind to it. To help you understand the severity of the situation, here are a few statistics. The U.S. is one of the top 3 destination points for trafficked victims. Approximately 78% of the victims are enslaved for labor, 22% are enslaved for sex, 55% of the slavery victims are women and girls, 26% of victims today are children under the age of 18, and the average child sold into slavery today is 13 years old. An estimated 60,000 victims of human trafficking are enslaved in the United States. And here's a map showing you the most popular areas of human trafficking in America. While exact statistics vary from source to source, human trafficking is still a very real issue that needs to be ended. I know all of this information on slavery might be overwhelming to you, but there are simple ways you can help be the solution. You can talk to your friends about this issue and just raise awareness. You can also help by donating directly to organizations like Blazing Hope Ranch that help support women and children and even men who have survived human trafficking. You can also help support the Blazing Hope Ranch by purchasing some of my art over here at these tables. 25% of all my art goes to Blazing Hope Ranch. I have created a new page on my website, The Abolitionist Artist, but have not published it yet. This page will feature artists who use their talent to help support an organization that fights against human trafficking. There will be a place where you can read information about the artist, view some of their work, a link to their website, and information about the organization they help support. If you or any of your artist friends would be interested in this, please contact me and I will feature them on my website and Facebook page. My hope is to eventually make Art to Free Hearts a community project. I want to encourage you to take what you have learned today about slavery and do something with it. When I started Art to Free Hearts, I did not have a lot of money to just give away. So I started using my talents and began by giving just 10% of all my art sales to Blazing Hope Ranch. I know 10% was not a lot, but it was something. And now I've been able to raise that to 25%. And since I began supporting Blazing Hope Ranch 2 years ago, I have been able to raise over $4,000 for them. The only thing I regret about this project is that I waited almost 3 years before I started helping this wonderful organization. I got caught up and distracted in life and school, but I could have easily started giving something back then. I've learned that if you sit around and think, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, tomorrow will most likely never come, so you have to act now. As William Wilberforce once said, you may choose to look the other way, but you can never again say that you did not know. Thank you.